Do I have a volunteer to open us up in prayer this morning?
Wait,
I'm going to call David.
okay.
You're a prayer hog.
Oh, we said it looked like one, right?
Mhm.
Dear Lord, I thank you for today. Thank you that we can all be here today. I pray for the people that are not here, that they may be safe in their travels. If not, for them to get better and to come. And please guide us in this message, and we might glean something from it. Please guide us in everything that we do. In His Son's name, amen.
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 All right, we're going to do a small recap. So let's turn to Revelation 12. So I'm going to read it as it's, well, I guess real quick, as I mentioned last weekend, we're kind of throwing things against the wall and in terms of ideas and seeing what sticks. So I'll read this as it's written, and then we'll reread it as what I think the imagery that it's presenting represents. So, starting in verse 1, now a great sign was seen in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, under her feet the moon, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and about to give birth, and she screamed in the agony of labor. Another sign was seen in heaven, where there was a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on its heads were 7 royal crowns. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of heaven and threw them down to earth. It stood in front of the woman about to give birth, so that it might devour the child the moment it was born. She gave birth to a son, a male child, the one who will rule all the nations with a staff of iron. But her child was snatched up to God and his throne, and she fled into the desert, where she has a place prepared by God so that she can be taken care of for 1,260 days. Next there was a battle in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. But it was not strong enough to win, so that there was no longer any place for them in heaven. The great dragon was thrown out, that ancient serpent, also known as the devil and Satan, the adversary. The deceiver of the whole world, he was hurled down to the earth, and his angels were hurled down with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, now have come God's victory, power, and kingship, and the authority of his Messiah, because of the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them day and night before God, has been thrown out. They defeated him because of the Lamb's blood and because of the message of their witness. Even when facing death, they did not cling to life. Therefore rejoice, heaven and you who live there. But woe to you, land and sea, for the adversary has come down to you. And he is very angry because he knows that his time is short. And when the dragon saw that he had been hurled down to the earth, he went in pursuit of the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she could fly to her place in the desert, where she is taken care of for a season and 2 seasons and a half a season, away from the serpent's presence. The serpent spewed water like a river out of his mouth after the woman, in order to sweep her away in the flood. But the land came to her rescue. It opened its mouth and swallowed up the river which the dragon had spewed out of its mouth. And the dragon was infuriated over the woman and went off to fight the rest of her children, those who obey God's commands and bear witness to Yeshua. All right, so a lot of imagery, so I'm going to kind of go in order here and pick out each one of these images that John presents. So the first one is this woman clothed in the sun. As we discussed last weekend is the nation of Israel, the faithful daughters of Zion. So if you care to study that, Galatians 4, chapter 4, verse 24 through 28 talks about this same woman. So then we have the red dragon, the serpent. Also, we looked at Revelation 17, which calls the serpent a beast in that chapter, but it has the same imagery. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. So the red dragon represents the adversary, Satan, and the one who enacts the spirit or attitude that opposes the Messiah. Okay, so you can read, obviously, Revelation 12, 13 also provides the same imagery, and Revelation 17. Then we have the 7 heads that make up the dragon. We discussed this as being 7 kings in the nation they rule. Also, and we'll turn there in a little bit, Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7 talks about the same imagery, not in reference to heads, but they're individual beasts. But we'll correlate Daniel and Revelation here in a bit. Then we have the 10 horns, which represent the 10 kings that have not yet taken reign at the time of this vision. So Daniel 7, as we'll read, talks about the same imagery as well as Revelation 17. And then we have on top of the heads, the 7 heads are 7 royal crowns. So I either took this as being the leaders of the nations or the authority that the adversary has over each nation.
Because I guess those that follow numerology, 7 represents perfection. I think I've heard in some cases. So that would almost make sense that if it's seven crowns, that he would have that perfect authority over those.
Yeah.
Rulers.
Which I don't know, is there a reason they correlate the number 7 to perfection?
It's often used when referring to imagery of that's related to God.
Yeah. Okay.
So is 5.
There's a lot of numbers that are prime numbers.
But I saw on the 7th day God rested from all his works.
Okay. All right. Then it talks about a third of the stars that were swept out of heaven. So I would suggest that we consider these to be those who are in elevated positions of power, who are deceived by the adversary and brought low or judged by God. Isaiah, if you remember when we went through Isaiah, there's over 10 chapters that go in detail about the judgment and fall of each nation and their leaders. Okay? With me so far?
So that's not a third of the angels leaving heaven with the devil and turning into demon
No,
followers?
that's not how I take it.
No.
But if you read it at face value, I mean, that's the kind of imagery you get, right? So we'll reread Revelation 12 with this and what each of those images represent. Then we have heaven. So heaven represents elevated positions, which, you know, if you take the Greek word literally, it just means air or up. Yeah, yeah. So it talks about bed or birds in the Aranos, just means a elevated position up. So heaven represents elevated positions or positions of power. Okay? Earth. So when they're swept down to earth, represents being removed from those elevated positions, to be made common. Okay? The battle in heaven is a battle for authority, a battle for positions of power or positions of authority. Okay? Angels, which the literal translation just means messenger. So in reference to Michael, it could be viewed as the saints. So if you go to Malachi, it talks about the person preparing the way, John, and he's referred to as a messenger, or the same Hebrew word is interpreted as angel in many other places. So it's not necessarily a angelic being; it just means messenger.
There's a side note in my Bible that says that in Hebrew the name Michael means who can compare with God. So if we were to replace that statement there with where Michael's at, then war broke out in heaven. Who can compare with God, and his angels battled against the dragon.
Mm-hmm. So are you saying maybe there's not even a angelic being that's with the name Michael?
There aren't really many references to Michael.
Right. Okay.
In the Bible, so I mean, to put a whole bunch of emphasis on, you know, a named being that's used, I don't know, is it used just once or is it a few times?
Well,
I
three
think,
times in Daniel,
yeah.
once in Jude, here in Revelation. Daniel has the three references to.
Yeah, mine says Daniel 12, he is the protector of Israel who will deliver her from tribulation.
Which God is also referenced to as being that person as well. I think
10:13 says one of the chief princes. Then in 21, your prince. He's the protector of Israel. Stands guard over the sons of your people.
Yeah.
Can you define a saint? Who is a saint? What is a saint?
Sure. Are you the Greek definition?
Well, just as you've written,
Agios.
it could be a messenger in reference to Michael. It could be viewed as the saints. Who are the saints that, or who qualifies as a saint?
So the Greek word hagios just means morally blameless or pure. Those that are found. So those are that are found accounted as righteous by God. So hopefully we're saints.
So those in covenant or had.
Means set apart.
Yeah. Yeah, so those in covenant. Those that are consecrated.
It's not a reference to moral bearing, it's a reference to position.
Yeah.
Position reference.
So in reference to the dragon, I would suggest that it's talking about those kings that the dragon had authority over, or Satan. So they were essentially his messengers, right, bringing about his purpose. If we turn to Ezekiel 30, I'll read verse 7 through 11. This is speaking of Egypt. Ezekiel 30, verse 7 through 11. It says, "They will be desolate even when compared with other desolate countries," that is Egypt. "Likewise her cities in comparison with other ruined cities. They will know that I am Adonai when I set fire to Egypt, and those supporting it are destroyed. When that day comes, I will send out a angel," or a messenger, "in ships to terrify the unsuspecting Ethiopians, and anguish will overcome them on the day of Egypt. Yes, here it comes. Adonai Elohim says, I will destroy the hordes of Egypt through Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babel. He and his people, the most barbarous of the nations, will be brought to ravage the land. They will unsheathe their swords against Egypt and fill the land with corpses." So who is the angel in this instance?
Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar, carrying out, in this case, it's the Lord's will, right? So I think it's viable to correlate that in the same sense to the dragon as well. And then we have Babylon, which Revelation 12 doesn't really talk about, but if you go to Revelation 17, talking about the same beast, the harlot who sits on the beast represents the spirit or attitude of the world. So that would be seeking after power, after positions of authority, and the worship of pagan gods. So if you remember, we talked about Revelation 17, the final beast, or Satan, will devour the harlot. So the nations will replace the harlot and as their motivation with the beast, or Satan. So Satan will replace their desires. Does that make sense? So in this essence, the harlot will be devoured by the adversary, by making it obsolete. Make sense? Okay, so let's...
Passage was that in reference to?
Yes, that would be chapter 17. I'll just read it real fast. And chapter 17, Revelation, starting in verse 15, it says, "Then he said to me, the waters that you saw where the whore is sitting are the peoples, crowds, nations, and languages." So all the nations are taking part in that attitude, right? The spirit of the world, the desire of power, wealth, worship of other gods. You know, we think of pagan gods, but you know, that could be science, whatever you hold dear to yourself.
We think of religion as some kind of defined system, but it is not generally. For instance, socialism is actually more of a religion than it is a governmental system. So because it has all the same hallmarks as any religion does.
Right.
So you can say religion, but if you do, then people draw a
There's a God
pretty
involved.
narrow conclusion.
Right.
But I would say it's false religion.
Vice, yeah.
That incorporates all of that.
Right. It could be an ideology, right? That
Yes.
that takes over your
Yep.
motivation.
Well, that's your purpose,
Right.
Your core.
Okay. So, a horse hidden by many waters are peoples and crowds and nations and languages. As for the 10 horns that you saw, what do the 10 horns represent? We covered this. The 10 kings, okay. And the beast, which is Satan, they will hate the whore, bring her to ruin, leave her naked, eat her flesh, and consume her with fire. So I am suggesting that that is, the beast is basically replacing the harlot as the nation's purpose. They will worship the beast, and it actually says that the beast. They will have the number of the beast on their foreheads, representing their allegiance and worship of the beast.
So an amalgamation of religion, perhaps.
Yeah. Okay. So now that I've went through the imagery, let's go back and read this and insert what I understand the imagery to represent. Revelation 12, starting in verse 1. Now a great sign was seen in a high position, a woman clothed with the sun under her feet the moon, which I didn't mention that. So what do you think that represents? Israel has the moon under its feet. What does the moon represent? Lesser power. When does the moon come out?
At night. So
What does the night or dark usually represent?
time of evil.
Time of evil.
Time to sleep, man.
Time to
Chaos.
sleep. Chaos. That's a good one.
Shows.
So if the woman has it under her feet, what does that represent? She has power over it, control over it. She's put it. She's conquered it, right? She's overcome it.
Well, it's a juxtaposition between clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet.
Yeah.
So,
So she's righteous and she's conquered evil, essentially, right? Okay.
full of light.
And she screamed in agony of labor. Another sign was seen in the high positions. There was a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns, and on its heads were 7 royal crowns. Its tail swept a third of the leaders or those in positions of power, out of their high position, and threw them down, or removed them from their position. And it stood in front of the woman about to give birth, so that it might devour the child the moment it was born. And she gave birth to a son, a male child, the one who will rule all the nations with a staff of iron. But her child was snatched up to God and his throne, and she fled into the desert, where she has a place prepared by God so that she can be taken care of for 1,260 days. Next, there was a battle for the high positions. Michael and his messengers fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his messengers fought back. But it was not strong enough to win, so that there was no longer any place for them in their positions of power. The great dragon was thrown out, or thrown down, that ancient serpent, also known as the devil and Satan, the adversary, the deceiver of the world. He was hurled, or removed from his position of power, and his messengers were also removed from their positions of power. And then I heard a loud voice in heaven saying, I'll skip down to verse 13. And when the dragon saw he lost his position of power, he went in pursuit of the woman who had given birth to the male child. But the woman was given the 2 wings of the great eagle, so that she could fly to her place in the desert, where she is taken care of for a season and 2 seasons and a half, away from the serpent's presence.
We never did talk about what the child was.
Yeah, who's the child? back in verse 3 or 5, sorry.
Is it not Christ?
Isaiah 7. One that's gonna roll with a rod of iron.
Yeah, Israel. The child is Israel?
No, Israel's the mom. With Christ, not with God.
That's what I would.
Messiah.
That's what I would.
Because he's the one that's gonna rule with the rod of iron, right? Isaiah 7.
So timeline-wise,
Let's not get into timeline yet.
why? How can you not?
We have to at the end of the passage, because that's where I was going.
Well, first I want to focus on who is who.
The imagery.
Yeah, I want to focus on who is who, and then we'll get into timeline.
We got 15 minutes.
Well, you can't do it all in 15
Hurry up,
minutes.
hurry up.
Oh, golly. You're fine.
Oh, one more season.
Funny looking, right?
Year. It's a year, literally a year.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
Are days actually days?
Don't know.
It could also be 1,000.
The 1260 days.
If he's got that figured out, I'm
Oddly
gonna kiss his
specific.
feet.
That's not.
Me?
I'm gonna wash your feet. if
No,
it's the
I don't have
1260
that
days.
figured out.
Dang it!
Not yet.
Dano does. We're all weak.
I haven't been that blessed. Yeah, Psalm. I was looking at Psalm 2 as well. That
Oh, yeah.
that references the
That's a
same.
good one, too.
It says, "I will proclaim the decree. Adonai said to me, 'You are my son. Today I became your father. Ask of me, and I will make the nations your inheritance. The whole wide world will be your possession. You will break them with an iron rod, shatter them like a clay pot.'" So that's in reference to the Messiah.
Which is interesting because Psalm 2 is fulfilled at his resurrection.
Yeah.
Because he became the son at the resurrection. According to Acts 13:33. Because it quotes that in reference to his resurrection.
I have a question about
Which helps
that.
with the timeline. That's why I mentioned that.
Why would you say son of resurrection? I thought that was Jesus Christ. The
That's what we're
resurrection.
talking about.
That's it. Yeah, we're talking about the Messiah.
What?
That's who we're talking about.
Oh, okay, I guess I was.
So when you read it like that, it gives off. It presents a whole different kind of viewpoint, right? You kind of you lose that. I don't know. Is romanticized a good word for? I think of the movie Constantine, where you got the battle of the angels and Lucifer and Michael, and it kind of you lose that, I think, when you approach it kind of with the representation I'm presenting. Okay. All right, so let's go to Daniel 2. So we're going to talk about the 7 heads and the 10 horns. Someone want to read Daniel chapter 2, verse 31 through 35?
You, O king, were watching, and behold, there was a single great statue. That statue, which was large and of extraordinary radiance, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. The head of that statue was made of fine gold, its chest and its arms of silver, its belly and its thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. You continued watching until a stone was broken off without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay, and crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed to pieces, all at the same time, and they were like chaff from the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone that struck the statue became a great mountain and filled the entire earth.
So Daniel 2, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar has is a statue, right? So it's has a head of gold, breastplate of silver, and then bronze, and then iron and clay. So four sections of the statue. Now let's turn to Daniel 7. Someone want to read Daniel 7, verse 1 through 8?
In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babel, Daniel had a dream and visions in his head as he was lying in his bed. He wrote the dream down, and this is his account. I had a vision at night, and I saw there before me the four winds of the sky breaking out over the great sea, and four huge animals coming up out of the sea, each different from the others. The first was like a lion, but it had eagle's wings. As I watched, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted off the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a human heart was given to it. There was another animal, the second one, like a bear. It raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. It was told, "Get up and gorge yourself with flesh." After this I looked, and there was another one, like a leopard, with 4 birds' wings on its sides. The animal also had 4 heads and was given the power to rule. After this I looked in the night visions, and there before me was a 4th animal, dreadful, horrible, extremely strong, with great iron teeth. It devoured, crushed, and stamped its feet on what was left. It was different from all the animals that had gone before it, and it had 10 horns.
Okay. All right, so in this one, instead of a statue, we have beasts. So to correlate the two, so the head of gold would be beast number 1, which is the lion with the eagle wings. Then you have the bear, or beast number 2, which is the bear, which is associated with the silver breastplate. And then you have the leopard, which represents the girded bronze. And then lastly, you have what it calls a dreadful beast, which is associated with the legs of iron and clay. Okay. So there's some, I won't go into why, I guess on this chart, why we associate the beast in the section of the bronze with each leader and nation. Pastor has a pretty in-depth study on why they made that determination. I guess one example would be like the head of gold or the lion. If you remember, the lion was plucked of its wings. It was given a human heart. Represents Nebuchadnezzar.
Daniel says that Nebuchadnezzar
Yeah.
is the head of gold.
Yeah, he did say he was the head of gold.
Scripture says it's
And then the imagery of the lion with the eagle's wings being plucked, right, and given a human heart, basically being, removed from almost like a godhood, which he thought, he was trying to attain to, was made, was brought low, right? So he was made stupid like an animal. So beast number 1, or the golden head, would be Babylon or Nebuchadnezzar, and the first head of the beast or the dragon in Revelation correlates with Babylon. So you have the head of gold, the lion, and the head number 1 of the dragon would be Babylon. So this is just one. I'll present you the 2 most common thoughts. This is the first one. The second would be, the second beast, the bear, the breastplate of silver, that in head number 2 of the dragon represents Medo-Persia and Cyrus the Great. Beast number 3 would be the leopard, the bronze gird. Represents, so there's common thought here that there's, this represents 4 of the 7 heads. So that would be Alexander the Great, Alexander the Fourth, and Philip the Third, and Perdiccas. So that's one common thought. And then beast number 4 is the dreadful beast, which is head number 7, which contains the 10 horns. Okay? So that's, go ahead, Laura.
So it said beast number 4 was the most powerful.
Right.
How is the beast number 4, which is the most powerful, correlated with the
weakest part.
clay and iron? Because that's the weakest point, because the clay is
Maybe, so it's a mixture of things, right? So the feet are iron and clay. Maybe the clay makes the feet more adaptable, so it can run, it can do things, as opposed to the shins that have to be very strong to accept, the transfer of weight up the extremity. We're kind of thinking of it more functionally.
Yeah. I think the mixture of material is because it's you know, and we'll get into this when we talk about the destruction of the temple. It's a mix of people. Go ahead, Pat.
It's the cohesiveness of the makeup that it's referring to. It's an admixture of 2 different things that don't mix well. So the kingdom that it represents is not unified very well.
so strong, but easily.
Yes, powerful but not unified and unbreakable from inside.
So you're saying its attack is much greater than its defense?
Oh yeah.
Like gold itself, like yeah, it has the most value, but in terms of strength, it's not a strong metal either. I see less, and I see it going like a range of value, top to bottom, versus strength and resilience.
I thought it was interesting that they put clay, like you said, like these 2 elements that probably aren't the greatest, as the foundation of feet. Like this really weak composition. I don't know, does clay and iron, do they turn into like some super strong material? I don't
No,
think so.
I would
Only
say
in the
that this,
Mistborn
But
series.
They put that as
Yeah.
the foundation of feet.
the statue has a very weak foundation, so it can
Uh-huh.
easily topple over.
I think we're stretching the metaphor.
Yeah.
Probably.
Clay is brittle, but iron isn't.
Yeah, it is.
It depends on how much carbon content it has in it.
I think we're getting a little too technical.
Yeah. Yeah, don't start talking about metals. I'll start geeking out here.
What kind of iron are we talking about here?
We could take a metallurgy class.
Okay.
Sure, at the time this was written, iron was like the strongest stuff that you have. Stronger than bronze.
Okay.
But it can also oxidize.
So you're not gonna take a
Thank you.
gold-tipped spear into battle. You're gonna take an
That's my
iron-tipped spear into
interpretation
battle.
of it.
Maybe if you want to make them rich, when you need them pieces in it.
Just plate it.
Like today, it'd be, if you did a diamond or
So
Carbon fiber.
So now let's correlate this back to Revelation. So you have the first beast, the head of gold.
And I thought the lion got courage. The Tin Man got the heart.
Come on. So
Is it the Tin Man or the Scarecrow?
Scarecrow got a brain. He didn't even make it.
so this this interpretation takes the perspective of the offer in consideration. So in the time of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar was the primary focus, right? That's who's having the dream. So that's kind of the starting point of the kingdoms that he's having dreams about. Revelation is a look back in history and forward. So it encompasses not just Babylon as the starting point, it captures the nations before Babylon as well. So Babylon correlates to the third head, and then the two major nations that Daniel didn't address are Egypt and Assyria, which if we just read Ezekiel 30, Egypt is definitely an object. Well, it's a major power, and it is an object of God's wrath as well. Each one of these nations becomes an object of God's wrath. Go ahead, Justin.
Sounds like the Revelations and Nebuchadnezzar's dream, what is really coming to, what it's prophesizing is that, God's wrath, as you said, God's, what he's going to do to those kingdoms, to the nations who have corrupted people, and it's people with power, and the power that they had over other people. I could be wrong. I don't know. I think from what I remember my dad studying in Dad fits it, it's that the rock there's Nebuchadnezzar dreamed of that was slamming against the
statue.
What?
Against the statue, the
Yes,
legs, yeah.
The statue. And it's okay, MMA. The destruction of every kingdom, south, east, west, and that's what the statue was representing. And and it's a similar thing. Am I right? It's a similar
Yeah.
thing with Revelation.
Yeah. Yeah, who's that rock?
Yes.
Yes.
No. It's a similar
No,
thing.
No, you're good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay, so then you have the beast number 2, which is the silver breastplate. That correlates with head number 4, which is Medo-Persia. Then you have the leopard, which is Greece.
What about the ribs? I feel like the ribs.
Oh. No, I'm kidding.
So,
Cyrus, Darius,
Yeah.
mine says,
And
the three ribs may represent three principal
Artaxerxes,
of the Medo-Persian Federation, which was Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt.
Okay.
Sorry.
No,
Didn't
no,
mean.
thank you for the clarification. I appreciate it.
I think it was actually,
that's in my PowerPoint that I reviewed.
So head 5 and 6 would be Greece and Rome. And then head number 7 correlates, correlates with head number 7. Sorry, the dreadful beast, number 4, the legs of iron and clay, correlates with head number 7 that has the 10 horns. Okay? And then as we'll read, there's a second beast, which is going to be, represents an extension or a resurrection of the first beast, that has a revived head, and that in itself has 2 horns. So this will be, I'm not going to spend any time on this and how we got here. I'm going to spend all of our time focusing on head number 7 and the horns. Okay? And I'm 5 minutes past, so any comments or questions so far?
So are you in agreement with the first chart or the second chart?
This chart.
Okay,
Don't ignore this.
because those are 2 different interpretations
Yeah.
of those passages.
We will touch on this because There's some, when we talk about this resurrected beast, the mainstream idea correlates this idea back to the resurrected beast, which is, they correlate it to Rome, or
It's so
the
similar.
Catholic Church.
It's so similar.
Some people.
Yeah. It's
Well,
a
we did
pretty
this
common,
study,
Right.
we looked at empire, reach, and lines, and deduced that Rome did not fit the description
Yeah.
appropriately.
and we'll look at that.
Good memory.
We'll look at, why is the common thought that Rome fits the bill?
Because they're an easy target for people to be mad at.
Yeah, and I think every generation has their own, antichrist.
I think people probably try to fit Rome to being, I think they want to make Rome that the iron part of that statue, because it was Rome that was in control of Palestine at the time of Christ.
Right.
And then as you read through
Well-
through the New Testament,
Spoiler alert.
we know from history how some of the Roman leaders in that
Yeah.
persecuted the Christians.
All right. That's all I had. Thank you. I think you talk about the horns. I don't know. You could send it to me again. I do have your PowerPoint about the caliphate.
So I've got one on the Antichrist, the common,
I know, but I love it.
prophetic.
Yeah, I don't think I have the one on.
Covers all those.
Yeah,
That's what you got.
I don't think I have that one.
Leave a note, just
We learned about that too.
just because.
Yep, it's good to have.
Were we dismissed in a formal?
Yes.
Maybe not so formal, but
Informally?
Oh, careful, Holly, you almost fell.
No, I didn't. Sorry.
Hi, Holly, how are